All right, welcome to Roundtable Dolphins episode 3 with my new co-host Billie Melissa. Thank you so much, Billie, for joining me on this pod. It could not have come at a better time or a worse time.
Yeah, it depends
Um,
how you feel as a Dolphins fan.
I mean, yeah, really though. So, just this morning, 10 minutes ago, news broke that the Miami Dolphins have indeed fired head coach Mike McDaniel. This is not at all a shock to me, to be honest. With covering the Dolphins and knowing this team for 30 years, I honestly wanted them to just because the team has been stuck in mediocrity for a very long time. They haven't won a playoff game in over 25 years, and Stephen Ross is somebody that continually he's loyal to a fault, and there's been a lot of, even with regime changes, there's been a lot of holdover for front office executives, and that's caused a really big issue with this team for so long. And really, when they fired GM Chris Greer, who was with the team for 20 years, again loyal to a fault, you run into a situation where only firing him would have been a half measure. Like
Mm.
that's the biggest reason. Like I like Mike McDaniel. I think Mike McDaniel is still an offensive genius. I think what he did with the limited capabilities of Tua Tagovailoa was special. I highly expect him to either be a head coach somewhere else or really to be an offensive coordinator somewhere else. But the reality was, if the Dolphins did not fire Mike McDaniel and start from scratch, that this team probably would have been the same thing in 2026 and beyond that.
Mm.
You have to, in my opinion, when something like this occurs, when your team cannot just crawl out of the dredges of the AFC or the NFC, whatever conference they may be in, you have to make a drastic move. And again, getting rid of Chris Greer was that first step, but keeping Mike McDaniel would have just been not, it just would have kept the team in place. And to be fair, for Mike McDaniel's credit, he did have a limited quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa. We know this already. But regardless of that situation, it's up to you as a head coach to get the best out of your players and to facilitate whatever, steps need to be done to make sure that your team is relevant and staying in the playoffs and all that.
Yeah, it just seems like there needed to be a massive overhaul in a lot of areas, that the best thing to do is kind of just clear out, start from scratch and see what the next era of the Dolphins is. I mean, he did a lot in his time there, the first 2 years at least, and then it
Yeah.
kind of just faded off over the last couple of years. And I guess it would have been, if he was to stay, maybe one more year, see how it went, and then, after that, probably make the decision. But they saw a move in Baltimore and took the opportunity, is how I see it personally.
I mean, there's been a lot of smoke. There's been a lot of smoke screens going on. Obviously, like we talked about on a different pod, that there's a lot of job openings, especially with John Harbaugh now becoming the top candidate for everybody. This move from the Dolphins is not a shock because of that simple reason right there. Now you can connect the dots any way, which way you want to. You can say that there was conflicting reports that came out that the Dolphins were talking to John Harbaugh, that they're not talking to John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
But the simple fact is, if they didn't talk to John Harbaugh, that would be insane.
Mm.
They were already on the fence with Mike McDaniel. There was a lot of reports that he may be safe, may not be safe. Again, the timing couldn't be more perfect. And moving on, and especially not even with John Harbaugh in the picture, you look at all of the coordinators, that are available. I mean, obviously they're not going to hire Brian Flores again, but you look at Vance Joseph, you look at Cliff Kingsbury, you look at Kubiak, you look at all of
Yeah.
the coaches right now that are in the mix for all these head coaching jobs, and the Dolphins are like, you know what? Like, look at all these guys that are up and comers, that are young and dynamic, like a Jesse Minter, that you
Hands
need
off.
to, yeah,
It's coming
yeah.
to bottom.
You need there's just a lot of need, and there's a lot of really dynamic opportunities right now. And the Dolphins needed to move on from Mike McDaniel to give somebody else that other shot. And you're right, like when he came out, they went 9-8, which is not a great record, but they went to the wild card round, and then 11 and
Yeah.
6 went to the wild card round. Tua Tagovailoa was the passing yards leader. He was the completion percentage leader. Things looked pretty good initially, but the league caught up with what Mike McDaniel was doing, and also, again, this isn't all on Mike McDaniel. Chris
Mm.
Greer built a roster that was just full of holes, and we saw that over the years. The offensive line was never quite there, and that's always been my gripe with the team. Is like you, especially when you have a quarterback that was already injured in college, you should have been beefing up that offensive line. We can go down and down and down the line, but it was a perfect storm for what occurred now. That's basically
Yeah.
what it is. You needed to move on. You needed to do a full reset. Interestingly enough, the Dolphins did get rid of two of their longest front office executives when they got rid of Chris Greer, and these
Mhm.
executives are also holdovers from past regimes, like I said. So I was like, okay, maybe Ross is finally doing what he should be doing. He had a very big he had a very he kept saying his favorite thing to say was the status quo is not acceptable. And for the longest time he said that. And it's like, okay, well, what is the status quo? Because you keep keeping people that maybe shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But now that's the truth. Like he finally realized, okay, the only way to get this Dolphins organization out of mediocrity is to do a complete and full reset, and now they're doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, with Tua not being particularly thrilled, it seemed to be there next year. Kind of seems like he's looking for his own way out. I think it was time, see who can come in, who can make a difference here. And I think, you see like Anthony Weaver's kind of out there in the coaching, being called in by like the Cardinals and I
Hmm.
think the Falcons as well. Everything else
And
seems to
and
be
the
clearing
Ravens
out.
now
So,
too.
and well, yeah, I think they be well, he suits us. He's been there before. He's made a difference there, so that makes sense. But yeah, time for a whole new regime. And I guess with the GM search, I can assume if it goes down the Harbaugh route, you're getting Chad Alexander from the Chargers.
Yes, yeah, that's a perfect segue because interestingly enough, the Dolphins have already moved on to their four. Well, they're assumingly four final candidates because they did in person or they did Zoom interviews. They did like eight, I think there was eight candidates to start with, and now they're down to four that they're moving
Yeah.
into in person. One of those four should be the next GM. That is kind of how it works, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to bring in more people. However, there is a big connection with John Harbaugh and Chad Alexander, who you just mentioned. He, interestingly enough, is the Los Angeles Chargers assistant general manager. He did not have a Zoom interview. He did not have a virtual interview. He's
Yeah.
moving right into the next step of being an in-person interview. Um, Again, you can put your tinfoil hat on and you can go down whatever rabbit hole you want to go down. But as much as the NFL is secretive when it comes to these things, it's also very obvious with a lot of teams what they do and their moves. You
Yeah.
know, the Dolphins have been in trouble with tampering before when they tried to get Sean Payton and tried to get Tom Brady. They got dinged a first round pick, which was tough. But
Mm.
when it comes to the moves that are very obvious, like obviously they still have to abide by the Rooney Rule, meaning they still have to interview a woman or a minority candidate for their head coach before they can hire John Harbaugh. But let's look right in house. You just mentioned him. Anthony Weaver is the current DC and a very big candidate for head coaching positions. I would
Yeah.
not be the least bit shocked if the Dolphins interview him for the head coach position. And I wouldn't even be the least bit shocked if he also gets that job. However, when we're talking about the connection with Chad Alexander and Harbaugh, they have a direct connection with one another. The
Hmm.
timing, again, could not be more perfect and not could not be more uh, coincidental right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big swing for like a new chapter of the Dolphins. I feel like he's been part of like winning organizations. And if they are heading down or they were inspired to end the relationship with McDaniel based on that, I think he seems like a likely candidate for the next. But there are three other guys here that also have well, I guess four if they go for Anthony Weaver as well as an
Mhm.
interview.
Yeah.
All of them have different benefits.
Yeah, I mean, this is yeah, this is gonna get real interesting real quick. It would have been it's kind of crazy because Mike McDaniel, there was reports that he was saying that he believes his job was safe. He even admitted openly that he was going to be part of the GM search, which made everybody,
Yeah.
including myself, believe, oh, he's staying. If you're openly saying that you're going to be part of the GM search, you're staying as the head coach. Now he's out.
Mm.
Now, but I had reported on this just yesterday. I had talked about it, especially with the John Harbaugh situation. what perfect way to bring somebody like John Harbaugh in? John Harbaugh is, again, the top candidate for any team, regardless of what anybody says. We know this. He's a winner. He's a
Hmm.
Super Bowl winner. He's been in the playoffs multiple times. He's got the record for 8 playoff road wins, I believe it is. And he's, regardless of his struggles with the Ravens recently and not being able to get back to the big show, he's still that coach. So you
Yeah.
talk to John Harbaugh, you go, hey, we're going to bring in somebody that you're familiar with. We want your say in on the GM. We're going to give you X amount of money per year, and you're going to turn this Dolphins organization into a winner. Would he say no to that? I don't think so. I don't think anybody
Yeah,
would
I
if
think
he,
the only argument against it that I've seen floating around is the cap situation, not the
right.
most exciting thing to come and be a part of. But you've got a chance to show, and John's got something to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He didn't want to leave Baltimore, and so a pissed off John Harbaugh coming into a team that's kind of not been hitting what they should be. Not doing as bad as like the Patriots in previous years, or
Mm,
you know, but still, not getting the success that they feel like they should do. I think it makes for a nice little pairing. I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but
mm.
I don't know. I think that that seems like the right avenue to be walking down.
Yeah, and exactly like you said, John Harbaugh still has much to prove in the fact that yes, he's been a head coach, but he hasn't really been given the kind of power to make more higher end front office decisions. So if you couple that in with the Chad Alexander and go, look, you guys are going to be working together to rebuild this roster. And obviously, they don't have a great cap situation. They have an even worse one because of Tua's contract. He's going to trigger a record 99 point something $1 million cap hit if they
Hmm.
cut him, which the Broncos did that with Russell Wilson, and it was like 80 something million, and they just moved on. And look at them now. They're one of the best teams in the AFC. So you think about it in that way, and you go, look, Harbaugh, you're going to be given the keys to the kingdom. You're going to be given more power personnel wise, on top of being the head coach to work with Alexander. And it's going to be sucky the first year because you're literally going to have to not only cut Tua Tagovailoa and take that cap hit, probably cut Tyreek Hill and and trade most of your good players again. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works. But you start from the ground up and you go Harbaugh, you tell Harbaugh, like, look, this is now your team to mold. You say you have something to prove, turn this team into a winner at bar none. You know what I mean? At like the bottom, where that's where this organization is going. Honestly, again, going back to, where they're at right now when they got rid of Chris Greer, I believe one of the reasons why they got rid of Chris Greer was because he was not open to trading players at the trade deadline. So instead, they moved on, and Champ Kelly was made the interim. And he's also going to be interviewing, or he
Yeah,
was
one of
supposed
the
he was supposed to interview for the GM position. He's not part of the. Oh, he is. He is
he
part of
is part of
the.
the final four,
He's one
yeah.
of the final four. Excuse me. But they moved on from Jalen Phillips, but it still wasn't enough. Like, as much as it would have honestly been heartbreaking if they would have got rid of Devon Achane and they would have got rid of Jalen Waddle, it still would have made more sense for them to do so, to stack all that draft capital to just go after the draft in 2026 because their cap situation is not going to be great. But they could still do that. Once we're in the offseason, the Dolphins could still trade these players to get that cap space, or I mean, not only the cap space, but also to get that draft capital. So again, you look at the overall aspect of this new job for anybody. It doesn't even mean John Harbaugh, just
Yeah.
anybody, any head coach coming in, any GM coming in, going, look, you have a blank slate. And Dolphins owner Stephen Ross is no stranger to pulling out the checkbook. He's made big swings at big free agents. Tyreek Hill is one of them, and Ndamukong Suh was one of them. That didn't really work out as well. But regardless, like, he's not been a stranger to pulling out the checkbook to going for those bigger players. And conversely, like, you know, opening up the checkbook for whoever comes in, and going, look, like, we're gonna build this team the right way, and it's now ground zero. You build it up. You build it up
Yeah.
with John Harbaugh, whatever. Like I said, whoever comes in.
They're putting it out into the universe of like, John. I don't know. I think just from the Mike McDaniel move, it seems very likely I mean, it could have been behind the scenes, it could have been like a whole thing anyway, but like
Mhm.
conspiratorially, that's where I'm heading to. But the other candidates here for GM seem fantastic options. I mean, there's John Eric Sullivan from the Packers,
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
loyal
yeah.
there. He's got experience with teams transitioning, especially at quarterback. Been around for some other like star quarterback eras. So, he could be here to kind of revolutionize another chapter of the Dolphins.
So a little bit of breaking news here, real quick.
Uh-oh.
So,
Uh-oh.
yeah, so Jeff Darlington, who very good insider and works and has been covering the Dolphins for as long as I can remember, just tweeted, "I'm told the Dolphins expect to make a decision on their new GM by tomorrow." They met with interim GM Chap Kelly on Wednesday, and the other three candidates, Chad Alexander, Josh Williams, and John Eric Sullivan, flew into South Florida last night for in-person interviews that are taking place today. So we
So
keep
later
talking.
today, let's just
We
keep it going.
we keep talking about timing, and look, reports have indicated that John Harbaugh is not going to interview for a head coach position until next week. Now,
Mm.
again, I know we're going on the John Harbaugh train here, but just it's just the
Doesn't
timing
mean you
of it.
can't decide your GM
Right.
beforehand.
So it was. This is again. This is NFL. This is what the NFL does, and it makes sense. The new GM is going to pick the new head coach. And
Yep.
that's just the way it works. Now, the GM could contact said coach and talk to them and yada, yada. They come up with their plan, whatever. But it is smarter for that GM to be put in place first and then the head coach to be brought in after that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do it at the same time. But regardless, the GM is considered to be first ahead of the head coach for obvious reasons. The front office, personnel decisions, then trickle down to the head coach who then has to coach those players, right? So it makes sense that they're moving this quickly to bring in that GM. Now, if we somehow get to the crossroads or get to the decision that Chad Alexander is the GM
Yeah,
of
I
the
think you can
Dolphins,
deduce what's coming next
right?
after.
You can kind. I mean, again, we're this is just speculation. We're
Yeah,
just
of
we're just
course.
talking like
I
everybody
mean,
else is
Jesse
talking.
Minter also, coming over from the chat makes sense for them too. So, I think
Yeah,
that there's a lot of branches off of his tree where you can kind of see where it's leading. I don't know
hmm
what it looks like for the other guys coming in if Josh Williams gets in. I mean, Harbaugh's an attractive head
yeah,
coach regardless of relationship to them.
right,
So
right, right.
it doesn't mean anything, but
No,
it's fun to have a little pick at the branches and see.
so speaking of what you just said with Jesse Minter is was under Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. Stephen Ross is Michigan till he dies. He loves Michigan. He loves anybody that comes from that school. And so it would also make sense for Jesse Minter to be that person too, because of the connection with the Chargers franchise of Chad Alexander. And
Hmm.
yeah. So again, we're saying John Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, John Harbaugh, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. And I don't fully expect that to happen whatsoever. But just the timing of it just makes a whole lot of sense. And to be honest, of the four final candidates, if it's not Chad Alexander, I see them going with John Eric Sullivan from the Packers. To be honest,
Yeah.
because I mean, again, of these four candidates that are the final ones, they're all really qualified. The main goal for Stephen Ross, the main goal for the Dolphins, is they needed to pick somebody with steep college scouting. And all four of these guys fit the bill. Chris
Yeah.
Greer wasn't exactly that. He worked his way into it, but he did not have that kind of bigger background in college scouting and all that. And he wasn't really the greatest talent evaluator. So they go after somebody like even Josh Williams, director of scouting and football operations. He's been with the 49ers and he's done a fantastic job there. Interestingly enough, which is an obvious thing to look at, all of these candidates come from winning teams, come
Yeah.
from teams that are currently in the playoffs. So, you know, whatever you want to take it that way, at least the Dolphins are doing that
Yeah,
in
I mean,
that
they're all
manner.
winners. Like
Yeah,
they've all got great credentials under their belt. I don't think you can really go wrong with any four of these guys. I think they'll
yeah,
bring different benefits to the team. Depends what you're kind of looking for, and I guess it will be just based on what they expect to be the next chapter for the Dolphins.
yeah. I mean, and so, if they decide whoever the GM is today, per that report, or tomorrow rather, then
Mm.
you go into next week, you go into interviews because nobody's hired a head coach yet. All of these candidates are still interviewing. Like there's so many candidates. I don't
Yeah.
remember there being this many candidates in recent memory of a head coaching cycle. Like
Yeah.
even last season, I believe it was before Mike Vrabel joined
Pats.
the Pats this season, he didn't even get hired, which was weird to me. I was like, how
Yeah,
the hell did he
yeah.
not get a job? But I think there was so few candidates then that like the ones that got like Raheem Morris was hired. This could have been 2023 too. I don't remember the exact
Mm.
year. Anyway, the point being, Vrabel wasn't hired and then went on a consulting year, and then now he got hired by the Pats. They're doing great. My point being, there are so many available candidates this season that nobody is doing things fast. They did it fast the last time, the
Yeah.
Vrabel year, and like I said, this could have been 2023 or 2024. I forget, but I think it was 2024 because that's when he consulted, I believe, with the Browns. But the point
Mm.
being, nobody's moving fast. This is the
Yeah.
first time, and also in recent memory, that like there's been head coaches that were fired within like a week's time, even less than that, days time, where they do the Zoom, they do the in person, they abide by the Rooney Rule, and then all of a sudden they're the head coach.
Yeah.
And that I believe that's Ben Johnson was that, Aaron Glenn was that, like they were hired fairly quickly. And now because I think the quality of candidates that are coming out from all of these teams being coordinators, or even like I brought up Mike McCarthy on the other pod that we do, there's a lot of really qualified people that could be head coaches this season, and I don't think anybody's going to be jumping the gun and hiring
Mm.
anybody by the end of this week. I think all the interviews are going to pour into the next week, which again, going back to John Harbaugh, that opens the door for that, but it also opens the door for the Dolphins to have their GM already installed and then start searching for that next head coach.
Yeah, there's a talented pool, and I guess, if you miss out on your top guy because he gets hired before you get the chance to, it's just next man up and a deep pool of talent to really pick from.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, Vance Joseph, you got Jesse Minter that we brought up. Todd Munkin is there. He's interviewing.
Competing. Yeah.
He's interviewing for jobs. There's just so many. I don't know all of them off the top of my head,
Yes, too
but
many.
there's too many. Yeah, I'm like every day I'm like, oh man, I didn't even think I wouldn't even thought of that. Like I believe I somebody's also interviewing, I think, the Chargers quarterback coach for I don't know. There's a lot.
Yeah.
The
I
point
mean,
being,
I think the Chargers is a great place to start because it's
yeah.
a young roster of coaches that have space ahead of them to grow and become really exciting.
Plus, you have a year under Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh
Yeah.
is one of the best coaches, regardless of he was with Michigan, won the
Hmm.
national title, came over to the
Yeah.
Chargers, turned them around in a season which everybody thought was going to happen, and now they're back to the playoffs again.
Yeah.
So,
And been to a
uh,
Super Bowl before, so
yeah,
didn't
eh,
win
yeah,
because
yeah,
but
yeah. But man, this is crazy. There's just so much going on, with
any
the
more
Dolphins.
news? Tua's
Yeah,
still got a
right.
job? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I know, really though. But it will be interesting to see what the Dolphins do past the GM, past the new head coach, because with the new head coach usually comes a new set of coaching staff.
For
So
sure.
Anthony Weaver, being the current DC, he's already interviewing for head coach opportunities. I believe he's
Yeah.
probably going to get a head coach opportunity this
Okay.
year. He was already up for a multiple last season, didn't happen, came back to the Dolphins, but I think he goes somewhere, if not for the Dolphins.
A lot of
So,
Ravens fans wanted him to step up a year or two ago
right,
to
right.
the head
So,
coaching position. So, another team would be lucky to have him.
yeah, definitely. I mean, wherever he goes, then that's already an opening right there for the Dolphins to have to go seek. But regardless, no matter what, every time there's a new head coach, they bring in their own people anyway. That's why Jim Harbaugh brought over Greg Roman. That's why he brought in Jesse Minter. It was a brand new coaching staff, and look where they're at. So,
Same with Mike
uh,
McDonald in Seattle.
yeah, exactly. So, complete reset for the Dolphins. It's going to be interesting to see
Lots to be excited about.
it's gonna be interesting to see where they go. I had briefly touched on it. We'll just transition right into here. But speaking of the cap situation, the cap hell they find themselves in, this is gonna be really interesting for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek posted on Instagram on X. He said season whatever loading it just said loading, and it was a picture of two pictures of him in a Dolphins uniform. Now, he dislocated his knee, and
Mm,
early on in the season, I believe it was week 4, and he was out. It really obviously hampered the Dolphins' offense. But when Tyreek Hill is on the field, he creates magic. He is one of the reasons why Tua did so well because of his yards after the catch. That guy's just a monster of a football player, but he carries with him a 50 million plus cap hit right now.
mm,
So, regardless of what happens, the Dolphins can choose to trade him. Choose to cut him as a post June 1 designation. They would save like 30 something million on the cap. But if they keep him, they would obviously have to completely redo his contract because you can't have somebody 50 million apart from Tua affecting your cap.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting though for Tyreek Hill seeing all the changes. Like maybe he wasn't that big of a fan of Mike McDaniel. Maybe he wasn't that big of a fan of Chris Greer or whatever, being on a team that he knew that was severely lacking in several areas. He was a shining star on an offense that was otherwise kind of lackluster. Not Devon Achan. Achan's been great, but Jalen Waddle's been kind of up and down. Like he's been good, but it's like he kind of flourishes when Tyreek Hill's on the field. So you look at all those changes and you wonder, would Tyreek come back for obviously a much different adjusted deal? Would the Dolphins want him back?
I guess it depends maybe what's going to go on at GM and head coach because he might make his decision based off on that, on whether he thinks that that's going to be a winning combination and he wants to stay. I'm sure plenty of teams would be jumping immediately into his phone book to kind of grab him if not. I think he has just he can make the decision for himself, really.
No, yeah, definitely. And again, the thing with Tyreek Hill is he said it multiple times in press interviews and whatnot that he uses social media just to troll people.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so
Lamar
you
does that too.
You're right. So you take whatever he posts with a grain of salt because he's always messing around. But at the same time, like, the thing I do believe is that Tyreek Hill really likes the Dolphins organization. I've felt that since he came over. I believe he still feels that way. He was a champion for Tua for every single season that he was the quarterback. But he
Mhm.
could be upset that Tua got cut, or I mean that Tua got benched as well, which he vocally said that on social media. But who knows? Like, I'm not saying that he would want to go and follow Tua. Um, when the
But maybe with the
Dolphins,
fresh start, he'll be excited by what's coming and feel re-energized to kind of go off
yeah,
on
definitely,
be that
and
Dolphins.
yeah, no, definitely. And at the end of last season, when the Dolphins didn't make the playoffs, he said that he wanted out. He wanted to be traded, and he ended up saying that it was just emotions, yada yada, what have you. But I mean, like you have to understand that he probably did really feel that way as well, regardless of
Hmm.
his contractual issues, like or contractual, things going on there. He probably really did mean that because the Dolphins didn't make the playoffs and they weren't looking like that great of a team, or they didn't. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah. One
So
thing I will say about that though, if we are keeping the conspiratorial hat on, John Harbaugh comes over, he doesn't like personalities like that. He's not afraid to get into a scrap. He's got into a scrap with Marcus Peters on the sidelines before. Doesn't like it. So he's gonna want some people who's maybe not gonna challenge the his ideals and ideas. But yeah, no, I think he was happy to stay in Miami. The weather alone,
right,
it,
right.
it means something. It does, especially in December, it can play into, climate and stuff can play into players' decisions for where they end up.
No, definitely, definitely. Also a little bit, not breaking news, but rather a connection that I think might happen
Hmm.
quickly. Um, the Washington Commanders got rid of Cliff Kingsbury, right? They needed an
Yeah.
offensive coordinator. Mike McDaniel worked for Dan Quinn for multiple seasons, and he is a good offensive coordinator. He's a good offensive mind. Don't don't sleep on that happening if Mike McDaniel does not get a head coach
It's
opportunity.
exciting over there, Jaden Daniels. I mean, there's a future for him over there. He's kind of revolutionized that. I mean, it's sad that he got injured at the end of
Yeah.
this season, but there's a lot. I mean, Mike McDaniel, I think, could do great things over there.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think of that, and I also think of, like I said, the Ravens. You think of you think of the quarterback that if Mike McDaniel was using what the offense that he was using, obviously for Tua, but if he put that towards even an actual high level quarterback like a Lamar Jackson, like a Jaden Daniels, imagine what he could do, especially with both
Yeah.
of them being as mobile as they are.
I'm not complaining. He can come over. He can come for an interview.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, man, there's just it's just kind of
There's
crazy.
too much. It's a massive puzzle piece at the minute. It's like, where's everyone going to end up? I don't know. It's exciting.
Yeah, yeah, it
And
is
it's going to
very.
change a lot of teams. Like Harbs was with the Ravens for 18 years.
Mhm.
McDaniel, of course, only 4 years, but that is enough time to kind of make a mark, make a stamp. Like he come in with a bang. Like people are excited about his career. And so I think people want to see what he's going to do next. I want to see what he's
100%.
going to do next.
Yeah, 100%. Again, you hit the nail on the head. There's going to be a lot of teams are going to change, and again, I feel more so this, obviously you look at the Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn situation, like I had previously brought up. Both of those guys were coordinators with the Lions for multiple seasons, changed the Lions completely.
Mhm.
Ben Johnson comes over to the Bears and completely changes the Bears. The Bears are one of the best teams in the NFC. Caleb Williams has the best season of his career, nearly
Yeah.
becomes the first ever 4,000 passing yard Chicago Bears quarterback, which is insane that nobody's ever been able to do that there.
I know,
Anyway,
as long as they've been around.
yeah, so, but you look at the other opposite situation with Aaron Glenn and the Jets. The Jets are just let's just say they're just a dumpster fire right now.
Hmm.
But Aaron Glenn is going to stay there and hopefully be able to change things around. And they, again, not the same situation because the Jets are just a different team, different
Yeah.
organization. But you think about the changes that Ben Johnson has made after being a coordinator for X amount of years and what he did. And you look at the coordinators now, like your Vance Joseph, like I was bringing up, like he's been really, really well respected. And look where the Broncos are at, and
Yeah, things can
he,
change super quickly. I mean, like the Bears, exactly what you said about the Bears last year, fired their head coach. Next year, completely different team, kind of same personnel. So, it really does make a difference. So whoever ends up at Miami, I think is going to completely change hopefully for the better,
yeah,
hopefully going to improve past the 8, 9 win mark and see yourself really competing in the AFC. Because that's my gripe with the AFC East is like, what's really going on over there?
yeah,
Like the Bills for so long had no competition, and no wonder they were topping the number one seed every year because who were they really up against? But now, there's a real excitement again with the Patriots actually being a contender again.
hmm
Jets, I'm sorry, I don't really think much is gonna change for you guys. But I want to see Miami competing again. I want to see some real like rivalries.
Yeah, and they were for a minute there, so the 2023 season, I believe it was, when they went 11-6, they folded towards the end of the season, but they were up for the AFC East win, the division win for the first time in a very long time, and then the Bills beat them, and then that didn't happen. But the
Yeah,
point being, like there was a real hope there, exactly like you're saying that the Dolphins were finally going to be that team to compete with the Buffalo Bills, who had just been running away with the division, similar to what the Patriots did for 20 years under
yeah,
Tom Brady.
exactly.
Like there was no competition for Tom Brady and the Patriots
No,
that entire 20-year stretch. The Bills were still a mess. The Jets were the Jets, and the Dolphins were just kind of like in the middle there, just like, hey, we're
yeah,
kind of a playoff contender, but we're not.
yeah,
Um, but you're right. There needs to be a more exciting elevation of competition for the Bills. But now look, nobody saw the Patriots being this good in 2025. Nobody did. And, credit to Mike Vrabel and Drake May being an MVP candidate. He's been playing very, very well. You can
yeah,
say, oh, they're playing trash can teams, yada, yada, whatever, but you play your schedule. So it's like, we'll see what happens to them in the playoffs. But
for sure.
they beat good teams. But the point being, now it's like, okay, so you have the Patriots and you have the Bills up here, who's that third team? The Dolphins? Are they gonna whoever comes in, if it's John Harbaugh, whoever it
I
is?
certainly don't think it's the Jets.
No, right.
I
Like
don't know. Maybe this will be their year that they come. Maybe they have a Bears moment and they completely
honestly, it's like
revolutionize.
honestly, it's like you feel like that every season. You feel like the Jets are gonna do something. Like when Aaron Rodgers first came over, I was like, maybe this is
I
gonna
mean,
be the
I
year.
didn't.
No.
I really didn't.
Yeah,
But I
so I
think
mean,
they did. I think they believed.
they believe it every year, and honestly,
Yeah,
like there's been
bless
times where
them.
they start off really hot, and you're like, oh, whoa, where the Jets coming out of nowhere? But then
Yeah,
they just falter. But we'll
the
see what happens. I
slopes.
mean, like you were saying, any coach can change any team, and right now,
Yeah,
Aaron Glenn is just not. He doesn't have the roster there with this team to do much of anything, as we see. Like no interceptions the whole year is wild, So, but whatever, that's them. Um, yeah, we'll see what happens in this coming week with the GM hire. Next week, we'll probably be talking about that and then potentially talking about the head coach finalist and whoever that may or may not be. But
future at
wow,
quarterback as well. Who's
yeah,
your next quarterback?
yeah, no, I mean that's a really big off-season conversation. We're running out of time here, but I did want to bring up Ty Simpson, which everybody is kind of connecting the Dolphins to. He's an Alabama
Yeah,
quarterback that just did declare for the draft. There's a lot like I haven't really watched a whole lot of tape on him, but from my understanding is he's a pretty decent quarterback, or rather a more higher end quarterback in terms of the prospects that are coming out of college this year. I know everybody, obviously, Fernando Mendoza is going to go to the Raiders, and Dante Moore, I think, whoever's got the second pick. It's not the Giants anymore. I forgot who has it.
I don't
Um,
know.
but anyway, um, Ty Simpson is that kind of mid to upper tens quarterback now, and the Dolphins could take a look at him. But from what I'm reading about him, from what I understand, is he's also a quarterback that doesn't have the best arm, but he's similar to a Mac Jones, where he still can be a very good, accurate passer. And
From what I saw, he needed the right O-line to protect him, give him enough time to kind of have that decision. Not really like running or mobile. I saw a few like to get the first down or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. He's an option, especially
I'm
if he's going to fall out of the first round and kind of land around the third or
I don't think
fifth
I
over.
think he would be a first round pick for the Dolphins that night because they're picking
Oh, for
number
the
11.
Dolphins, yeah, for sure.
They're picking number 11 overall, and so that's what everyone's already saying. Like, oh, this could be the guy that the Dolphins bring in. They do have Quinn Ewers. He only played 3 games. He was decent, but they need to find somebody. Whether that is maybe they can trade for Mac Jones. I don't know, or they can go and get like a Malik Willis potentially.
I was gonna say my personal pick for you after seeing him play against the Ravens is Malik Willis.
I mean, he's going to be a hot commodity, but I don't know that the Packers would even want to give him up. But regardless, maybe I don't
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
But the Dolphins need a quarterback. They need a quarterback because
But
Tua.
sometimes you look good in certain schemes and not in others. Like Snoop came to the Dolphins and
Did not look
didn't do
good.
much of anything, and then came back to the Ravens and kind of fits right in behind them. So I think, it depends. You never really know with a backup quarterback if they're just having a good game and then end up somewhere else and don't perform the same way.
Yeah, I mean, because like again, going back to Mac Jones, like he looks spectacular in that Kyle Shanahan system and with the
Yeah.
49ers, but who knows? But you're right. If it's an offensive line issue, the Dolphins need work or they have work to do.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, to be fair, the offensive line was pretty decent this season, but Jonas Sabanea was the worst in the league. And he as a rookie, they put him as a starter. So again, he got issues there. Why is he a starter? Why did he remain a starter? Who are the backups? Clearly, the backups aren't good enough either. You still got offensive line issues. So,
Yeah.
regardless, whoever the GM is in, come fix the O
That's
line,
your issue.
fix the O line, and then get whatever quarterback it is you're going to get and whatever head
Yeah,
coach.
exactly.
Well, I know I talked a lot, but there's just so much going on. Thank you, Billy, for joining me. This has been Roundtable
Thank you.
Dolphins episode number 3. We will be back next week for sure. Obviously, talking about potentially that new GM or the new GM in place, and if they've already moved on a head coach or the head coach candidates. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next week.